Yo, what's good? Everybody is mad late, but your boy was busy, tied up doing something. But I saw an interesting article that we got to talk about because honestly, I saw the title and I was confused. I was like, "Trustee is a whistleblower." It is like the trustee is expressly saying that she's a whistleblower is weird. So you know what? I thought let's this would be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about whistleblowers. What is a whistleblower? What's the difference between a whistleblower and an informant? I actually found some good information online that'll break it down. So we definitely going to dive in. If you're new to the channel, or if you're not, I'm Marcus, the debt-free dad. I'm a licensed attorney, licensed in several jurisdictions. None of those jurisdictions amount to me being your counselor at law. So if you're looking for a professional, finances, brain surgery, anything, make sure you find a professional who's licensed. Check with the state licensing agency to make sure they are who they say they are and they can do what they are asserting that they can do. Okay, so Trustee Carlisle essentially made a public notice yesterday that she is a whistleblower against Tiffany Henyard. Now, one of the things that were interesting is because all of the reports are saying she was one of Tiffany Henyard's strongest ally. Somewhere relatively recently, things broke down. We have seen some videos, watched some videos where there have been some contentious points between the two, but now we're going to actually dive in and talk about it. I actually pulled up an article so we can check it out. Shout out to the comments. Oh, somebody beat you to it. Somebody was here before the show started and dropped the comments. So, hey, definitely want to send a shout out to everybody who tapping in with your boy. She loves money. Definitely, definitely. They bring forth more credit cards. Oh man, I'm gonna have to check that out. Another thing I was thinking about doing, y'all let me know if y'all want to know, because I'm gonna be honest, like for a minute, I just was like, this isn't newsworthy. I see politicians steal all the time. So I was like, this isn't newsworthy. But it just kind of got interesting. And I actually thought about, y'all let me know in the comments, but I actually thought about doing a video uh, where I'll watch the pertinent, I'm not watching all of it, but I will watch the pertinent sections of her interview that she did with Roland Martin. It'll be kind of good to watch it in hindsight and, just give my take, but also, hey, your boy been to, I can't even remember how many. I think the first one was called the Reed School of Interviews and Interrogations or something like that. But I've been to a billion body language schools. So that might be some good content if y'all are definitely interested. But hey, if new credit card charges are coming up, 20K at Walmart. Yeah, if you got the link to that, drop it in the chat. So if you got the link to that, I'd definitely like to tune in. Let me go ahead and cue this video up. The video is crazy short. It is an article that's attached. We may or may not go through it. I may be able to just talk through it. But let's go ahead, jump right on in because I don't want to keep everybody up all long because it's mad late. Your boy got to work in the morning.
WGN Investigates has learned South suburban politician Tiffany Henyard has lost another key ally. Until recently, Henyard enjoyed near unanimous support on the Thornton Township Board, but now trustee Carmen Carlisle says after trusting Henyard and remaining silent, she will be a whistleblower against Henyard. Carlisle released a statement to WGN that reads in part, "For the past 2 years, Henyard has manipulated employees, vendors, and residents using her position to increase her influence, all while projecting a false image of success funded by the hardworking taxpayers of Thornton Township and the village of Dolton. Henyard shows no accountability or conscience for her actions against employees or taxpayers." Henyard has denied wrongdoing and claims her opponents are out for what she calls clickbait. Tomorrow at 9, tune in for exclusive new reporting on Henyard's spending that she tried to keep secret.
And that's those Amex cards that you were clearly talking about. Hold on, let me see if I could take a look at this article. Blah, blah, blah. We got that. I'm just going through to see new restrictions, blah, blah, blah. And you're in an entourage. All right, there's nothing new there. We don't even gotta dive into that. We don't even gotta dive into that. Yeah. Karma would be enjoying the trips if it weren't for the FBI. No grace should be given. You have hit the nail on the head. Soon as I heard that, I was extremely confused because one, the reporter initially said one of Henyard's strongest allies has suddenly turned into a whistleblower, which is weird. The second thing is it's weird to see an individual calling themselves a whistleblower because that's not typically how it works. So I was like, is she a whistleblower, hence the title, or is she an informant? Two different things, some similarities. I was like, you know what? Let's dive in and talk about it. Hey, if y'all get some value out of this, make sure you subscribe, like, share, comment, hit the dislike button, whatever. Whatever. Now, let me give you my background with whistleblower cases. I did a lot of stuff. Every time I talk, I'll be like, oh, I did a little bit, I did a little bit of that. But for 6 years, I worked whistleblower cases related to federal government programs. So let me explain what that is. Let's say I was an executive assistant for Tiffany Henyard. Just as an example. Your boy DFD is an executive assistant for Tiffany Henyard, and the village of Dolton receives a grant from the federal government that supplements whatever their annual infrastructure bill by providing 64% of the funding. So every year the federal government kicks 64% of the funding to the village of Dolton for them to use to help support their infrastructure. This is just an example. And I am the executive assistant. If that money is actually misappropriated or something is done wrong with regard to that federal grant, me as the employee, I could actually file a federal whistleblower lawsuit. And I don't know if y'all know this, but federal whistleblower cases people are professional whistleblowers who make a shitload of money. But that's essentially the normal context that you'll see it. Normally, it's misappropriation of money. Somebody files a federal whistleblower lawsuit, and there's some misuse or abuse with regard to federal government funding. So the capacity of that work, it essentially was pharmaceutical companies. Pharmaceutical companies would, let's say, a drug was marketed for headaches, but it was only approved by the FDA for headaches. That pharmaceutical company says, you know what? This drug also could grow hair on your scalp. So they start marketing that drug for hair growth, even though it wasn't approved. That's called off-label marketing. You're marketing that drug for something that's not on the label that the FDA hadn't approved. And a lot of times pharmaceutical companies would do this. They would sell the drugs. They would make billions of dollars selling that drug for hair growth when it wasn't never approved for hair growth. Somebody in the company would file a whistleblower lawsuit saying, hey, they're doing off-label marketing of this drug, and it results in a big payout. Because when you're talking about federal whistleblower statutes, in a civil standpoint, the whistleblower can get 15 to 30% of the recovery. So think about it. I did it for 6 years, and I would often see the same whistleblowers come across my desk because normally whistleblowers want some type of anonymity. Whistleblowers don't want to be disclosed. Whistleblowers really don't want people to know who they are. So a person working at the pharmaceutical company in the marketing department would know that Merck, for example, AstraZeneca, any pharmaceutical company, but some pharmaceutical company, Pfizer, is off-label marketing this drug. That person would run to a law firm, give them all the information he got. They would file a federal whistleblower complaint. The federal government would be like, this complaint looks solid. They would do all of the investigation. And when the recovery comes in, that whistleblower can get anywhere from 15 to like 33%, depending on how viable his information was to the federal government recouping those funds. Think about how much money that is. This is pharmaceutical companies. What was the largest settlement for a whistleblower case for a pharmaceutical company that I saw that was a global settlement? Global settlement means if a pharmaceutical company is the pharmaceutical company has a pill that's for erectile dysfunction, but it also grow hair on your head, and they selling it to grow hair, and it wasn't approved for that. If they're off-label marketing a drug in Virginia, they're doing it in California, they're doing it in North Carolina. So the damages to the government, and the penalty is really tied into the profits that the pharmaceutical company made from that drug that they were selling for the off-label reason. And so, man, what was the highest recovery? I can't even think. But you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars as global settlements, where the relator, the whistleblower, is actually getting 33%. So being a whistleblower for federal government violations, misappropriations of funds, big, big business. People go from company A, blow the whistle, and because they have, anonymity, there is no one knows who the whistleblower is. The company's trying hard that the government won't disclose who the whistleblower is. Once that whistleblower get there, 33%, what you think the whistleblower do? They say, you know what? I just caught Pfizer slipping. Let me go over here and get a job at AstraZeneca. And then they go work for AstraZeneca for 4 or 5 years. They find out some dirt that they doing. They file another whistleblower lawsuit. So you have these serial whistleblowers in the federal government who make a living, a rich ass living, collecting anywhere from 15 to 33% of whatever the recovery is when it deals with pharmaceutical companies. So those are the type of whistleblower cases, negotiations, investigations that I did. But this really struck me as odd. And let me see. Tiffany says she was sent 2 approved grants of 6.7 million and 3.7 million. Okay. And that was my other question. Because if I were me being a little bit savvier than probably a person who's working with Tiffany Henyard, because I'm an attorney, I've been doing this. But if you're going to be a whistleblower, finding some type of fraud related to funds associated with the federal government is the number one way to go. That's if you want to get a big recovery and make some money, that's definitely the way to go, because the feds got deep pockets and they provide a lot of money to states and local municipalities to supplement their budget. But the reason this was weird is because she announced herself as a whistleblower. Most whistleblowers want to prevent their identity. The news broadcaster says she was a biggest ally. So I was like, let's take a look at this scale. On one end, you got a government informant. On this end, you got a whistleblower. Now, you can fall anywhere in between. I would probably say snitch is the beginning end. A person could be a snitch on one end. On the far end, they could be a whistleblower. And then anywhere in between, we would probably put informant in between. So the question is she a whistleblower? Is she an informant? Or is she a snitch? Depending on the conduct, you can fall anywhere in between. Normally, it depends. If she would have actually filed some type of whistleblower claim, she would probably get status as a whistleblower. But that's not the case because I don't know what type of whistleblower she is. I couldn't find any information. Like, is she a whistleblower in what capacity? So I'm a little bit confused. But normally on that sliding scale, the you either being a snitch, an informant, or a whistleblower. Where a person falls on that scale generally is determined by their involvement, but not all the time. It could be some gray areas. So I want to cue up this article I found where they note some similarities and distinctions between a whistleblower and an actual informant. I thought it would be good to know so we can get a little bit of granularity on what the hell this lady really is. Because you calling yourself whistleblower, I identify as a whistleblower. That don't mean you're a whistleblower. Just because you say that, just because you say it's true, don't mean that it's necessarily true. The blurred line between whistleblowers and informants. I found that article. Let me see. What's good to my brother, man? Oh man, that's crazy. I hope the family's safe and glad the power came back on in time so you could catch the show. All right. I like to see proof of that. I wouldn't even imagine that he even knows how to apply right for a grant. Yeah. They probably hire somebody to write for grants. A lot of times it's not uncommon for municipalities to bring someone in who has an expertise in writing grants and getting grants from the government. She's trying to lower her jail time. I agree because they did say that she was one of Henyard's strongest allies. Now she's being calling herself a whistleblower. And if you had a level of involvement for, let's say, 2 years, and year 3, you're like, I'm gonna be a whistleblower. I'm gonna probably push you more over to the informant. You probably somewhere between the informant and snitch. Those are kind of the same thing. The snitch word is just a little bit more derogatory in the hood, but they're kind of the same thing. BTB, what's good, bro? Yo, y'all gotta check out too. I haven't had a guest on in all of 2024, and my guy before the billions is going to be the guest because he's got an interesting journey going on over there on his channel. Y'all should get over there and check it out. It's interesting. He's got a journey going on, and he's keeping everybody involved and updated on it. And it's definitely good content. So y'all make sure y'all go check it out. And I'm gonna be shooting you an email shortly with some more information. We good, but we in the dark right now. They talking about power nap being back on until Thursday morning. God damn, that's crazy. Oh man, that's crazy. I know somebody who bought a generator. It was like $6,000, and then he said once I got the generator, we didn't lose power for like 6 years. Share a piece of that video either in this segment or another live so we can get your reaction. Okay, we could. Definitely, indeed, indeed. All right, let me see. Let's go ahead and dive into this article. I'm gonna put it up on the screen a little bit larger, just in case y'all want to take a look at it. But we're gonna go down here, exploring the blurred lines between whistleblowers and informants. And this is actually a pretty good article, relatively recent. We're not gonna dive too far into it. You see here at the bottom it says the False Claims Act, an individual who report fraud against the federal government. See, I said healthcare. Such as Medicare or defense contract fraud may be eligible for financial rewards. Whistleblower can receive a percentage of the recovered funds ranging from 15 to 30%. I think I said 33%, but I knew it was something like that. But you can see False Claims Act, you can blow whistleblower cases. Dodd Frank Act, that's some Wall Street investor stuff. You can have whistleblower cases. Other programs, you can have whistleblower cases. So there's a lot of way to snitch and make it a lucrative business. All right, so we're going to go on the informant side first. The audience for informants. Informants are protected for information they provide to a designated external federal law enforcement agency, to the police, or to a prosecutor. Whereas a whistleblower's internal reporting is protected, each act designates an external agency to whom the disclosure can be made. So what that says is, in order to classify as a whistleblower, you have to, as somebody who filed a whistleblower complaint before, but in order to be designated as a whistleblower, you have to file your complaint or whatever the wrongdoing is that you're blowing a whistle on with the appropriate person. Sometimes it can be an inspector general at a federal government agency. Sometimes it may be somebody at the Department of Justice, but you can tell your boss, you can tell your boss's boss. If you don't tell a person who's designated as a named individual to trigger that whistleblower protection, you won't have that classification as a whistleblower. That's all that means. Disclosures are protected if made in court, to Congress, inspector generals, law enforcement agencies, or other designated agencies. Public disclosures are protected unless the information is classified or its release is specifically prohibited by statute. So again, Congress sometimes, depending on what it is, national security and things like that. But an informant is talking to law enforcement. A whistleblower has to become a whistleblower by disclosing the wrongdoing to a specified individual. Each statute identifies the person. If it was Medicare, healthcare fraud, like I did, it would have to be the Department of Health and Human Services, because they are the ones who handle all the funds and the programs associated with Medicaid. Now we go down here to motives. I think we all know what the motives for an informant is, but motives for an informant, it says motives vary. Apart from cash related incentives, informants may be motivated to disclose information. This is some motive. This is some informants. You know, they get into some street shit where it says this. Informants may be motivated to disclose information for vengeance or a desire for justice. A lot of times it's vengeance, or people that disclose information to get the competition out of the game. That's how informants roll. Or for a desire for justice, special immigration treatment, don't deport my family or me, in exchange for leniency if the informant participated in a criminal act. I don't know, Trustee Carlisle. You went from being a staunch supporter for years to now a self-proclaimed whistleblower. Sound more like an informant to me. It's going to depend on what conduct did you help support over those years when you were actually supporting Tiffany Henyard. If the informant participated in a criminal act under the pressure of police or prosecutors or in response to promises of a better condition of incarceration, such as a transportation to a nicer prison. That's wow. For a whistleblower, motives are irrelevant. Whistleblowers may be motivated by the public interest, revenge, financial incentives, justice. The only test to qualify for legal protection is that they had a reasonable belief that the information they reported evidences wrongdoing. Even if the whistleblower is mistaken in what they are disclosing, they are still protected if they had a reasonable belief, which can be provided by showing peers with equivalent knowledge could agree with the whistleblower's concern. So now that when you talk about the motives, now we starting to see that there's a real difference between someone who is an informant and someone who's a whistleblower. If I'm a whistleblower, that same example we gave, I'm Tiffany Henyard's executive assistant, and I just literally, let's say I just finished up my associates. I got 2 years of college. I got this job with, Mayor Henyard, and I'm really excited about it. And I'm like, something looks shady. And I want to make myself a whistleblower. So I report it. But let's say I make a reporting to the appropriate authority, the Department of Justice, the FBI, Congress, whoever the statute says I got to make that reporting to. And they look, and I'm completely batshit wrong. Like, I was like, they misappropriating grant money over there. When they look into it, they like, nah, actually, they didn't misappropriate anything. You just didn't know what they were talking about. Me being a whistleblower is protected. They won't disclose it. I can't get sanctioned for it as long as I had a reasonable belief. And to determine if my belief were reasonable, the question they're going to ask is, would a similarly situated person in his position, reasonably believe that the conduct they reported was worthy of a whistleblower complaint? Was it some actual wrongdoing? And the answer would probably be yes. If you probably took anybody who had an associate's level education, who just started working as an executive assistant with the mayor, and 6 months later they said they identified grant fraud, that person not going to know what the hell grant fraud is, not after those 6 months. Because just as a matter of course, if someone's doing grant fraud, they're going to hide it. You're not even going to probably figure it out to at least a year in the game. So, but that's when we're talking about the motives, that's where we see the really first big distinction at. Let me go ahead and jump to some of the comments real quick, just so I can make sure we not missing too much. Tiff the Test, dedicated career criminal, she gonna go down fighting. That's her personality. And like, do you really? I don't know. She don't strike me as the type of person who's gonna take some type of plea negotiation. They're all involved. I'll be honest, that's kind of what it's given. Because I saw another news report where it said for a period of time, Tiffany Henyard had the buy-in of and the support of all the trustee members. And as soon as I heard that, that was my first thought. I was like, I wonder how long did they had to report? Because remember, candor to the tribunal. I just started diving into this stuff a few weeks ago, and it gets more and more ridiculous. It's more and more of a shit show the more you dive into it. But that was actually my thought. I think that it was probably some palms greased on those trustee boards, and now they're trying to see, that's what I would assume. I know you can't say for certain, but I definitely agree. She's going to fight, but hopefully she won't be a true career criminal due to her not having a long tenure in politics. I don't know. Sometimes, depending on the crime, people come back, bounce back, and get in the politics game. So let's go back to this article where we're looking at the differences between informants and whistleblowers. Let me see if I want to see if I can put this link in the chat. I'm using this chat on this platform, so it might not make the link clickable, but you can copy and paste it if y'all wanted to If y'all wanted to take a look at that article, y'all can copy and paste that link and put it in your browser. But if you like copy and paste that link and it sent you to like Tiffany Henyard's donation page. But nah, y'all can check out that link if y'all want to check out the article. All right, now we're on financial incentives for informants, which is on the right. Sometimes informants get paid as part of a federal informant rewards program or negotiation as part of an agreement with the informant. Informants aren't making any money. Informants are generally like I don't know, y'all watch The Wire. Informants are like bubs on the wire. Like, okay, we'll give you a couple dollars. You give us some information. We might give you a get out of jail free card. Take my card. If you get popped for something, give us a buzz. If it's something light, we'll square you away. The informants normally aren't getting paid. Only informants who really get paid are like if you're a big time federal informant for like a major drug syndicate. Like a lot of people, if you know, I like history and crime stories and all of that stuff. Like Lucky Luciano was an informant for the CIA. So he got paid not directly from the government, but he kind of got a hall pass. Some of his opponents were taken out, allegedly. Some of his opponents were taken out in exchange for him providing information, and he had the autonomy to engage in his business ventures, legal or illegal, unfettered from law enforcement. So, but generally, informants aren't getting paid unless you're talking big time crime syndicates providing information against their opposition. Then there's some return on their information, but it's not necessarily being paid by the government. Now we pivot over to a whistleblower. It said a very small percentage of whistleblowers receive financial rewards, usually between 10 to 30% of what the government recovers in a successful enforcement action. So if she's in fact a whistleblower and it would be an allegation related to a misuse of some type of federal dollars, there will be a potential for anywhere from a 10 to 30% recovery. Recruitment. This is interesting. Informants. Sometimes informants may be recruited by law enforcement based on their insider knowledge. They may even participate in certain criminal activities authorized by their handler. Recruitment. No. Whistleblowers are never recruited by a law enforcement agency to report information. However, several federal whistleblower laws also protect witnesses cooperating with federal investigations and testifying in court. So, as we go down these, to me, it seems just with the limited information we have that Trustee Carlisle is sounding more and falling more on the informant side of the game, just with me personally. Remember, these is a little bit of nuance because this is talking about federal whistleblower. I don't know if she says she's a whistleblower because maybe she reached out to some state whistleblower statute. It's just very vague, but we're just going down it in general so everybody can have a clear understanding of what's going on. Let me see. Tiffany has someone in her ear telling her she's in charge of all the taxpayers' money. You don't need the trustees to vote on any purchases. I mean, it it looks like it was done unilaterally, but the reports I'm seeing now, they're talking about she's losing a strong ally. That was literally the first thing this guy said. I would probably like to go back to early purchases made by Tiffany Henyard and just to see how those votes went. Because now we know they voting against her every chance they get. Tiffany's profile is glowing. Carmen Carlisle only has her name, not even her photo. I know I actually looked her up on LinkedIn and because I always want to go to LinkedIn. Like if you're holding yourself out as a politician or professional, you probably got some type of professional social media. I looked her up. The only thing it said, I think she had like a hair salon or something like that, but it didn't. It said Dolton, but it didn't give anything about her trustee position or any of that type of stuff. Oh, okay. It's clickable. And we didn't get stabbed to donate to TIFF. All right. I just wanted to make sure. So that's cool. Informants are criminals. Ge- Generally, that's a fair assumption. Informants are definitely criminals. Absolutely 100% true. And whistleblowers may not be criminals, but they may be an ignorant participant. They may not have the criminal intent to do a crime. So, in that scenario I gave where I'm the executive assistant, if I'm just doing job signing paperwork because my boss tells me to sign it, and then it gets ultimately pushed through, and unbeknownst to me, my signature, my boss gave me a training with a specific title, and people would do that. When I was heading up an agency, I would have a few people under me take training so that they were authorized to make purchases for the organization in the event that I wasn't there. If something happened to me, nobody can get shit would be crazy. There would be an ineffective ass organization, especially a law enforcement organization. So it could be a scenario where the executive assistant took a purchase card training just so she can have it. Once she got that training, she's signing off on document because the boss says so in this example. But most times, whistleblowers, they may be participants, but they are participants who don't have the criminal intent. Versus informants, they like, you know what? We about to get this bread in this game. So that's kind of how I get. That's how I go. Hey, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Y'all definitely hit the thumbs up button. Now let's get back into the informant versus snitch slash informant versus a whistleblower. All right, now we're on length of relationship. Informants can also provide a one-off or an ongoing supply of information to law enforcement. Informant law enforcement relationships can be uh, long term than whistleblowers. So they can be a longer term than whistleblowers. Whereas whistleblowers can provide a one-off or an ongoing supply of information to law enforcement agencies, and the relationship usually ends once the matter is closed, unless a new violation to report or there is new evidence. And so you see this all the time. Typically, when law enforcement has an informant, CI, confidential informant, normally there's actually a paperwork that has to be done where that person is assigned a number. When you give that informant money, there's a pool of like cash that's specifically to give informants. But a lot of law enforcement not doing that. A lot of law enforcement, they probably putting it into the ground and they're like, yo, you're going to be my off the book informant. So there's a lot of backdoor deals that get made, but typically that's how you see informants. Informants on the streets, uh, as long as they're on the street and they're active in the community, whether it's drugs, gang stuff, they're probably going to be a viable option to get information from law enforcement. Whistleblowers, they file that whistleblower action. They get that whistleblower status by telling the right person that the law tells you have to tell. And once that action is resolved, it's over. Once it's resolved, it's a wrap. If new conducts occur, so again, in that scenario, I'm the executive assistant. I file a whistleblower claim against the mayor for misappropriating a grant that they received from the federal government. I file that whistleblower action. They do an investigation. That case is closed out. It's proven to be true. I get my 25% cut. Again, as a whistleblower, no one knows that I'm a whistleblower. I maintain my whistleblower protection. No one knows I'm a whistleblower. Mayor does the exact same thing a year later. I file a new whistleblower complaint. So you can keep going back to the well. That's how whistleblowers get paid. Or they jump from, in the pharmaceutical standpoint, they work at one pharmaceutical company, blow the whistle, leave, go to another pharmaceutical company, work there 4 or 5 years, find out what's wrong, blow the whistle, and they jump ship. So whistleblowers typically have a finite time period. Once this case is over with, it's a wrap. Informants, we're going to burn you out until we don't need you no more or until you can't give us good information. Now, protection is interesting. We're going to switch this up. Let's start with the whistleblower. Most modern U.S. whistleblower laws have confidentiality protection and protection from retaliation in an employment complex. Some allow anonymity. Anonymity can be removed to disclose one's identity in court based on a balancing test that weighs the social interest and the openness of the judicial system against the privacy interests of the plaintiff in remaining anonymous. I'll tell y'all that a little bit. Physical protection is usually unavailable from federal law enforcement agencies and handled by local law enforcement. Federal whistleblower laws do not protect whistleblowers from civil or criminal liability. So if you're a whistleblower and you do something wrong, so she's definitely giving informant vibes, because if you're a whistleblower, it would be no benefit. She was once one of Henyard's strongest allies, according to the reports. You're one of the strongest allies. If you're one of the strongest allies, let's put this in the context. You're one of the strongest allies for a couple of years. Now you aren't. If there's anything that Carlisle may have done where she signed off on a budget matter, some expenditure, and maybe got some kickback, she definitely wouldn't fall in the whistleblower category, because if she was technically a whistleblower, she could still be charged with the crime if she has some criminal exposure, and that would be pointless. The whole point of telling anything if you got criminal exposure is you don't want to go to the big house. So definitely given more vibes related to being an informant. What they talk about with that balancing test is, okay, a lot of things in federal law, they weigh the privacy interest versus the right to the public, of the public to know. Like, for example, let me give an example and then get back to this example. A Freedom of Information Act request, right? Here's an example. I'm gonna give y'all an example because I want y'all to understand this balancing test. A person's privacy rights versus the public interest in knowing. Let's say that I was, let's see, some Don Corleone's son. And Don Corleone is a deceased person, right? And because he's deceased, a news outlet or somebody who want to make a movie about him sends FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request to the FBI, says, we want all the information on Don Corleone because he's deceased. Now, if a person is deceased, they have a lower level of protection. This dude is no longer here, so it's a lower level of protection. But giving out that file could violate a privacy interest for the family. And so what attorneys would have to do is look, and when they're determining if they're going to give this documentation out to the news or to whoever, the guy who want to make the movie about Don Corleone, they would have to look at what is the value of disclosing this information to the public versus the privacy interest of Don Corleone's family. If it's general information just about closed investigations, they're probably going to give it up. A situation where they wouldn't give it up, let's say Don Corleone was shot by law enforcement on a rooftop, and there's images of that. In that instance, so instance number one, all closed investigations on the dead guy, they'll probably give those up because those investigations are closed. Freedom of Information Act, here you go, make your movie. But let's say there were photos of Don Corleone's death because he got shot down by law enforcement task force and some real, cartel type stuff, right? In that instance, those pictures wouldn't be released because when they look at that balancing test, what value to the public versus privacy interest of the family. The privacy interest of the family and seeing their loved one having these images plastered all over the news or the media or in some movie on Netflix would outweigh the public interest, so they probably wouldn't resolve it. So that's an example where you'll see the court and lawyers do this test: public interest versus a person's privacy right. So when we talked about here protection, we go down to being named in a whistleblower lawsuit. Most whistleblowers have anonymity, but there are some mechanisms where a whistleblower could be disclosed. And before they make that disclosure, the court is going to, again, do what we just talked about. What is this person's privacy interest versus the need of the public to know who this person is and what that public disclosure cause any harm? They'll balance it, and depending on which way it turns, they'll say, it's more of a public reason that this should be disclosed, so we'll disclose it. Typically, whistleblowers aren't getting disclosed, though. I can't think of one whistleblower case, and I did that shit for 6 years. I can't think of one whistleblower case I had where the whistleblower's name was actually disclosed. Normally on the court documents, it may be initials. I had one case. It was actually smart. When I saw that, I said, oh, that's smart. This person wanted to give themselves additional protection. So they created a limited liability company, and then they filed the whistleblower lawsuit as the limited liability company against the person who was doing the wrongdoing with the government money. So that way they had a little bit of buffer. In order to figure out who the whistleblower was, you would have had to dig through that LLC. Luckily, the whistleblower, I'm assuming the whistleblower was smart enough not to make himself like the chief operating officer of the LLC. But that's what they mean when they balance the privacy interest of a person or that person's family versus the right to the public to know. So that's a common thing in the legal world that you'll see. And hopefully that made a little bit of sense. There's about 5 people speaking to the feds at this time. Yeah, they got all the people. The best part is because they got so many people coming telling the same thing. Like, only like if 5 people come to talk to me, like I'm gonna be like, yo, only 2 of y'all getting the sweetheart deal. Like, like real talk. I would if I got everybody coming to talk to me, like, hmm, it's probably not good now. I don't think I was about to say if I had people talking to me, the person I would give the sweetheart deal to is a person who could give me some really great information, preferably by wearing a wire. But I think this whole situation, the bridges are so burnt. Tiffany Henyard would be wild to get caught saying something crazy to somebody on a wire because at this point, everybody is against her. The only people who had the opportunity to go in with a wire and get some really good information were like the first 2 people who who were closest, probably Keith and Lacey were probably the 2 people who had the best opportunity to potentially get something. Now that all the cards are out, I seriously doubt that the feds will use that tactic because I mean, I don't know. This is wild. Like, and it's funny, we talked about this on Pocket Watcher with JT, but in law school in the ethics class, one thing that they always say is every conversation you have with everybody, you have a conversation with them as if they are wearing a wire. That way, you'll always be above board. You'll never get caught or jammed up. This man, that power outage, man. You got to get. One thing I thought about buying one of them big ass, like it's like a big ass solar power battery, man. You put that bitch out in the sun, and that junk can like power like it can't power like a whole house, but you can power your essential appliances for a substantial amount of time, at least long enough where you don't want to lose any groceries or some shit like that. Yeah. Hopefully you get everything back on, bro. Now let's go ahead. The last one we got is protection. So that was protection for a whistleblower. Generally, yeah, anonymous. They're not going to disclose it. Whistleblowers can create companies and file the whistleblower complaint as a company to give themselves added protection. And if the court does disclose, the court has to weigh the person's privacy right versus the right of the public to know. Depending on where those scales fall, the court will make a determination. Their privacy right is more important. We're not going to disclose their identity. I've never had a whistleblower case where the identity was disclosed, and I did it for 6, 7 years and never seen one done. Now, protection of an informant. Confidentiality, anonymity, and protection from retaliation are available. An informant's identity can be disclosed later in court based on a balancing test that weighs the public interest in protecting the flow of information against the individual's right to prepare their defense. Protection from physical threat is available, including witness protection programs and handled by respective law enforcement agencies. However, the level of protection and enforceability is rather weak. In exchange for providing useful information, informants may receive protection from a civil or criminal liability for illegal acts, including acts committed to obtain the reported information. Prosecution is still possible where the informant's crimes exceeds the scope of what they are authorized to engage in. So, like if you get it's like y'all ever watch Snowfall? I don't know if y'all watch Snowfall, but Franklin's plug was a CIA agent, and Franklin had the anonymity to just kind of operate as he saw fit. And he got protection from rival gangs, and he got arrested one time, and he got a get out of jail free card. Informants can go that hard. I mean, if y'all from the DMV, hey, we just seen someone who I believe was a verified informant. Rayful Edmonds was released from custody, and I saw a guy on the news saying, "Yeah, I talked to him. He's going to a halfway house." They didn't disclose what a halfway house was, but hey, informants get sweetheart deals. They give information, and the more information you are, and the higher up you're going, the better deal that you can get. So those are really just the things that you. And if you go through this entire article, I'm not going to dive too deep in it, but you see his other uh, rewards programs. They even got informants for the World Doping Agency. they got a lot of things that you can do, but that's typically the difference. Informant, I think someone in the comments laid it out best. Informants are typically criminals who are providing good ass information to get somebody higher than them, and they're going to get a pass. Whistleblowers are people who see something. They may have been a willing participant, but they didn't have the requisite criminal intent. And because they don't have that criminal intent, there's probably going to be no criminal liability there. Now, the question is, well, could you be both? Could you be a whistleblower? Yeah, you could presumably be both. You could presumably be both. Um, yeah, I could see a scenario with that. I haven't seen that scenario personally, but I've worked in investigations where there were a criminal investigation and an underlying civil investigation against the same person at the same time. So I could see a scenario where a person was an informant or a person was a whistleblower. A person was an informant, you probably would be an informant first, committing some crimes, and then is some whistleblower matters there. It could be a scenario where you would be both. But I would tell you, as a federal prosecutor, I don't think I would ever have someone be both. I think you could be both. A person could be both a whistleblower and an informant. But as a prosecutor, why would I ever do that? If you're whistleblowing on something, but you also participated in the crime at some point, I'm just gonna say, nah, I'm not gonna make you a whistleblower because you're not getting any of that money. But I might give you less jail time. What you gonna do? Decline the offer? Shit, you already came and talked to me, so I already know you got some criminal exposure. So the answer to that question is a person could be both a whistleblower and an informant, but it will probably never happen because I can't see any situation where a prosecutor would agree to that. I wouldn't agree to it. If you got criminal exposure, I'd be like, no, you aren't going to be a whistleblower. You aren't going to benefit from a small portion of wrongdoing that you did because you had also a portion of ignorance where it wasn't intentional. Get the hell out of here. The first 6 months, you didn't know what you were doing. The last 3 months, you knew what you were doing. But now you're like, nah, I want to change a new leaf. Hell no, nah, get the hell out of here. So I think it is plausible. It's possibility versus probability. It's possible, but it's definitely not probable, I guess, would be the more interesting case. Tiffany's job was to chair meetings and call the vote. I know I actually saw, damn, I deleted it. Hold on. Let me see if I can pull it up. Let me see if I can pull it up. It's probably in my history. Exploring the blurred line. Gunner from yesterday's video. Oh, that was in a different. Let me go. I think it was in. Hold on, give me 1 second. I think I had it. I think I looked it up in Firefox. History. I'm a whistleblower. Is this it? Nah, that's not it. Fuck, I can't. Hold on. Let me go back. Was that it? Article I found. But damn, I gotta find it. It was a good article I found. I maybe do it another day. But it was a damn good article that I found. Essentially, this article that I found, it provided a bunch of it provided the direct location in multiple videos where certain transactions were happening. And so I think that a lot of what you all alluding to in the comments were correct. I think that this thing started out as potentially a lot of people being involved, thinking that this is an opportunity where we can all they call it. You ever heard of self-licking ice cream? It's like enough is enough for all of us to get. It looks like it may have been a point where trustees are like, "Yo, we're gonna give her our support and push these things through." And I don't know if there were any kickbacks or back dealings, but the way that article read, that she was the strongest ally. Now, a couple years later, she's claiming that she's a whistleblower when I think she probably is more of an informant for law enforcement. It just sounds a little shady. I like to see more detail. I did see an article where I guess she's going to come out, and maybe that's what you were talking about with the credit card purchases. But I guess they were like, "Oh, Carlisle is going to come out with some more information." So we'll definitely take a look at that. But yo, that's it. Carlisle is saying she's a whistleblower, but she appears to be more of an informant. And if she has any exposure due to any illegal conduct, she definitely falls in the informant category. But hey, side note, if you're at your job and you know something wrong going on, you can report it. You could being a whistleblower. This is how actually dope it is. Okay, how could I put this? Sometimes in employment law situations, all right, this is off subject, but employment law situations, sometimes it's best to file your grievance while you're still an employee, even though because think about it. If, let's say, I identify some wrongdoing, I filed the whistleblower complaint and I'm still employed there. If I was filing a whistleblower complaint for something where I'm not scared of the repercussions, because a lot of people like, oh, don't say anything, and you'll see that too. Trust me, if somebody been in this situation, you see something wrong, you're like, yo, this ain't right. Something got to go on. All old school people be like, keep your head down and just keep it moving. And I'm like, man, I ain't with that sucker shit. Nah, like, hey, my job is to do let me know what you want and I'll try my best to do it. But your boy ain't gonna do anything that's gonna jeopardize me and put me in a issue. But the beautiful thing about being a whistleblower, let's say I had a whistleblower or I found wrongdoing. I found my whistleblower complaint while I was employed. And if I was doing it in some situations, it actually may be beneficial to do it while you're employed and send it from your work computer. Now you send that whistleblower complaint. Once you send that whistleblower complaint, not in all, again, I'm not an employment law expert, but in unique situations, it could be advantageous to file these things while you're still an employee, because I've seen scenarios where a whistleblower filed their whistleblower complaint with the appropriate person. They do it while they're an employee. They send that whistleblower complaint from their actual work computer, off hours, of course, but they filed that whistleblower grievance. And when they file that whistleblower grievance, they have anonymity. But let's say they subsequently get terminated. If they got terminated, the whistleblower laws has provisions to protect them. So now they have an automatic defense to say, hey, I filed this whistleblower grievance while I was employed because I sent it from my work computer. And when I sent it from my work computer, they were aware of it and they retaliated against me. And because of that, I can hit them over the head for even more damages. I'm not saying that's the best case in all scenarios, but there are some scenarios where if you have a grievance, the best time to file them is while you're employed. Because sometimes, depending on what it is, once you're employed, once you're unemployed, if they terminate you, people probably won't give a shit. Not all the time, but it could happen. But, hopefully nobody ever in that situation where you got to think about your livelihood versus you trying to do the right thing being a lone wolf. It's a jacked up situation to be in. Do you think when she gets arrested, they'll seize her property and freeze her money? Probably so. I mean, typically that's the norm, because if you use government funds in any capacity, I just say government, it could be state or federal funds, but if you use government funds, the thing the government is going to do is they're going to try to recoup that money. And the way they can recoup that money is by taking your assets. That's why you see a lot of law enforcement officers having cool ass cars, because down at the motor pool, they got all the drug dealers cool ass whips. But yeah, that's probably actually the norm. Normally, what they'll do is try to freeze bank accounts, access to money. They'll try to pull back any assets that were taken. They'll have a fire sale because their goal is to try to recoup as much money as possible. You see the same thing if it was I mean, that's in any criminal case with money involved. The same thing when people had these Ponzi schemes, Bernie Madoff and all of those guys. They went try to find all of their assets so they could sell them and hopefully recoup the money. The problem with that is whatever you steal, I think on average, if I'm not mistaken, this was maybe a couple of years ago because I don't work those type of cases now, but it may have been something like shit 15, 20 cents to the dollar or something like that. It was something really low. Like when a criminal defrauds somebody, whether it's a government program or you personally, typically once they sell those assets that they got, people aren't buying shit that goes up in value. They're buying a bunch of dumbass cars and boats and stuff like that. So most times the things that they're buying are going down in value. So I think I want to say 15 or 20 cent on average is what people would get back. So if I invested $1 million in a Ponzi scheme, I'm probably only going to get 15 to 20% of that back after everything is sold and people are attempted to make whole. That's why it's kind of terrible, but that it'll probably happen. Chances are it will happen. Yeah. Oh, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I know, man. You know what I'm realizing? Like, I'm just keeping it a buck. Like, y'all, y'all let me know. Y'all know what I'm realizing is I used to be just like I kind of got insomnia. That's a whole like war thing. But I used to really like I'm up all night. I probably sleep like 4.5 hours, maybe 5 on a good night. And yeah, I used to do lives real early. I'd be like, you know what? I'm gonna do this live real early. And I would do a live at like 7:30. I was like, man, people still get home from work 8. Like the sweet spot for a live is if you want to do a live at like 10 or even midnight. Oh, man, midnight, everybody be tuned in on midnight. Yeah, I do got a real quick tomorrow. I am gonna do a live on something that somebody requested in the they actually left a comment in the video. I'm gonna pull it up so y'all can see what we're gonna talk about. And I'm gonna be honest, I normally don't like reporting on this type of shit because it's kind of annoying. But I'm gonna pull it up. Let's see. All right, let's. I'm gonna just pull up. No, not the video. Let's get out of there. Not a video. Let's pull up an article. All right, I'm gonna tell y'all right now. I normally don't like talking about this shit because it's like kind of frustrating. But somebody requested it. Oh my god, there's some bug or something flying in here. Get away from me. I think it's like mosquito or some shit. What the hell? But I normally don't like talking about this stuff, but somebody requested it. Kind of sound like Hannibal Buress. Ah, that's funny. All right, let's see. Let me go and pull up. Let me add this to the stream. We're gonna share this. All right, this is what we're gonna talk about tomorrow night. If y'all can see that on the screen, that. Let me make that bigger. Not the commercial with the dog running around, but just the title. We don't need the audio, but we're going to talk about a judge ruled Breonna Taylor's boyfriend caused her death, throws out major charges against ex Louisville officers. Um, just reading that headline sound crazy as fuck. I'm gonna just be honest. And reading that headline sound crazy as hell. And I probably do that show late too. Because it's probably gonna be a lot of cussing in that damn show. It's probably gonna be a lot of cussing in that show. But I saw the article, I saw some news reports, but I actually want to look at the judge's decision so I can see what the judge articulated as his rationale. I'll tell you just immediately on his face, the shit is fucked up. Um, but I want to read the actual court opinion. I probably read that's normally I read a court opinion. I'm like, you know what, we're gonna read it live and we're gonna read it for the first time together. I'm gonna read it to y'all, but I probably read that one in advance because I want to see where his legal analysis is going so I could either rip it to shreds or criticize the fuck out of it. But that's going to be the topic for tomorrow. So, yo, if y'all interested in that type of content, definitely chime in. And I think Friday, I'm going to do a video where we are going to react over here to Tiffany Henyard's interview that she did with our pro black brother Roland Martin. I'm about to forget his name. Roland Martin. They all sound the same. Let me see. Okay, let me go back and snatch it up real quick. Let me copy it. Hold on, give me a second. Drop it. There's so many damn comments right here. Do me a favor, drop it again so I can have it in this last comment before we shut down things tonight, and then we'll dive into it. I'm going back looking for it. Too many fucking comments. I'm trying to go back and find it. Drop it again in the comments. You could drop it in the comments again, and I'll still see it even after I log off in this live. The chat will still be up for like another 5 minutes or so. It's a cool little feature that still allow you to chat. So if you don't, I'll go back and try to find it, but it'll be easier if you can drop it in there for me again, and then I touch bases on it like that. And y'all let me know. My son told me, my son was like, y'all let me know which way should I pivot with this thing, okay? Because y'all know I always like to talk about money related topics. I don't know if y'all saw the video I did today where it was actually some balling shit. That's the type of balling shit I like to see rappers do. But a rapper in Georgia came out with developed a guaranteed income program where he's providing families $1,000 a month for a year plus financial literacy education and mental health treatment and other stuff. So I like doing the finance stuff, but I also like doing the reaction thing. So my son said what I should do, y'all let me know. Because normally I just do one topic at a time. I may touch on a couple of topics, but normally I just do one topic at a time. But he said I should break it down and do maybe 3 topics in one show. Just like, hey, we're going to have these 3 topics, have a main topic, but in the beginning, do kind of a quick, hey, these are things that we're going to talk about for 5 or 10 minutes because they're worthy of a conversation, but not a deep dive, and then dive into the bigger topic. He was like, you should probably do it more as a news broadcast style where you're reacting to maybe 2 or 3 things, 3 or 4 things, and then the things on the back end are where the meat and potatoes and you spend most time. Let me see. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I had been on the YSL. Yeah, that just go YSL too. That's too long of a trial. I'm not looking at that shit. I already know it's jacked up. I've been seeing the lead attorney videos. Uh, what is it? A to the seventh. I can't think of her name, but the lead attorney's homegirl. Shout out to her, AV. But her channel is covering it. I've been seeing a lot of people covering it. Let me see. Yeah, I'm gonna go back and look through the comments to find that timestamp, and then we'll dive into it. But y'all let me know in the comments if y'all would prefer that format instead of me just focusing on one thing. Some things are entirely dedicated to a whole video. If 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 the board of trustees have some ignorant ass boondocks meeting, I'm gonna have to talk about that shit for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, because it's just gonna be some hood shit. So there's just a plethora of legal insight and buffoonery that would need to get discussed. But generally, 2 or 3 topics may be something that we pivot to down the road to see how people like it and see how people respond to it. But yo, shout out to everybody who tuned in and enjoying this late night, early morning. I definitely appreciate it. I'm grateful to have y'all, grateful for all y'all support. If there's anything y'all want me to talk about, I got emails already with, hey, I can't guarantee that I'll talk about everything, but I will give it a once over. And if it's something that it meets what we're trying to do on this channel, we'll definitely talk about it. Can't promise I'll go through everything, but I will evaluate everything y'all see for consideration to rap about. There's only so many hours in a day. I appreciate y'all. Y'all be blessed, be safe. For the folks on replay, check out the content on the screen. There's going to be more content related to finance and attorney reactions.